Nick Pearson, you're my first in-person guest. Very unorthodox. If this becomes something of a trend where I get flown out to visit my guests, I'll 100% take it. But obviously why I'm here is, if people have seen the podcast or watched it before, I like to engage, I like to find out who my guest is. So tell me a little bit about yourself. I want to know, how old are you, when did you get into real estate, and now you about to announce you the MD of Tyson's, and how did you get there?
Yeah, Jade, well, thank you so much for flying down to Cape Town. It's been a great day spending time with you as well, getting to know you as an agent, and yeah, it just reminds me so much of my career and how I started in the industry. So yeah, in a nutshell, I grew up in a family where everyone was involved in real estate, which I think made a huge difference. So by the time I actually got into property, I had a bit of a running start, and I realized I'd picked up so much from my father and my uncles, and yeah, so I got into property by default, which like so much of us do.
As we do, yeah.
And it was just amazing once I found that vocation. So 22 years old, rocked up in Cape Town on like a small club rugby contract. And in my spare time, I thought, well, you know, what should I do? And the only thing I knew, of course, was property. So the last thing I thought I was going to get into, I got into it, and I absolutely fell in love with the industry. I started in a small town, Tableview,
yeah.
And it was just amazing. I mean, we had a small office that we were working in Bloberg Road, and yeah, just got out there and started knocking on doors, and eventually I knocked on enough doors that someone said, please sell my house. and then I sold the property within a few weeks, and yeah, it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life.
And can you remember the sale price?
Yes, I'd never forget the sale price. It was a small property in Parklands.
Yeah.
It was like a little townhouse, and I sold it for 520,000 rand. And it was a joint sale with another couple, the Sutherland family. And they subsequently now work for Tyson as well in the Tableview area, which is amazing. But yeah, I remember doing that sale, 520,000 rand, and when that 12,000 rand landed in my account, I thought I was the richest guy in Cape Town. I'd never ever experienced something like that. And the next day, I was shopping for cars at BMW as real estate agents do, you know. So yeah, I really started at the bottom, and then worked my way up, you know, from that position. I moved companies and joined a different brand as well. We also had an amazing experience.
Yeah.
And I just moved in, you know, slowly but surely, went from selling properties 520,000 rand and moved my way up the price brackets, where I just felt more comfortable. And I started selling a lot of apartments on the Bloberg beachfront, which was a great experience, slightly different market. And then from there, started selling homes in Bloberg as well, which was also another step up in terms of price brackets, you know. And I think, yeah, I mean, each step at that point was really amazing, and I feel like, you know, I'm so fortunate that I've literally sold homes in Khayelitsha for 120,000 rand, and I've been part of deals in Clifton that are close to 100 million, and basically everything in between, you know.
Yeah.
And I think one thing about me is that, like, my heart is really, I'm a real estate broker at heart.
Yes.
And I love being an agent. And, you know, when I hear your story today, traveling around Cape Town, yeah, we've been chatting the whole day about, you know, all the challenges that Jared's facing as well. And I really miss those opportunities to sell, you know.
It's so interesting, because, I mean, in our area, if we sold 97 million, like that's your year's accumulation. It's not just based off of one deal, which, if someone wants to sell and someone wants to buy, I'm always going to say yes. But in those times, at what point, because you're a family man, I'm recently a family man, well, had my wife, now we've got a little one, is 2. During that period, where did you meet your wife, and what was the impact it had on your career?
Yeah, so that's such a good question, you know, and I think in real estate, like, you get so many powerful single people in real estate, don't get me wrong, but if you're in real estate and you have a partner, that partner plays a massive role in your career. And for me, I don't think I would be at Tyson if it wasn't for my wife, Sarah. So we met when I was 12 years old. She was fell in love with her. When I was 12, I saw her for the first time. She was my older sister's best friend, and I just thought she was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life, and I knew there and then she was going to be my wife one day, you know. So I'll take you back to when we started dating. I was 24 years old, and I had to put this presentation together before I met Chris Tyson, and most good agents are not good admin people, you know, and Sarah can definitely attest to that. So she actually helped me in the living room one evening put this presentation together on PowerPoint, and I think that presentation played a huge part in me getting the job at Tyson. And yeah, we put that presentation together the day before I flew to Durban to meet with Chris Tyson and Lee Ellis, and without that little bit of support in that moment, I don't know if I would have got the opportunity to open Tyson in Cape Town.
I was going to say, because to take a step back, the presentation wasn't just to become an agent; it was to start the agency.
Correct.
In Cape Town.
Correct. Yeah.
And why did you want to go from being an agent to now opening your own agency? And what made you sort of affiliate with Tyson's as opposed to another larger brand, or even just your own independence? What was the allure at that stage?
So the moment I got into property, like, I absolutely fell in love with the industry, fell in love with the sale process. I really loved working with people. And I mean, I couldn't help myself. From the time I got started, I was always trying to build up a team. I was always so passionate about, you know, recruiting people and forming a team. I think it's got a lot to do with my rugby background and you know, the teams that I worked in and played in. Played a huge part in that, and yeah, I just loved that process. So you know, by the time I got the opportunity to open Tyson, I'd probably done it a million times in my head every single night before I fell asleep. You know, it was something I used to dream about, something I was so passionate about, and I just played it over and over in my head every single night. It really was my dream to open a real estate company in the Western Cape. And when I went to, you know, I actually was approached by a few different companies at the time that kind of, they saw me on social media and the kind of sales that I was doing and maybe, you know, the teams that I was building, and I was very active on social media. So I got approached by a few companies, but what really set Tyson apart for me was, you know, kind of when I went to Durban, I knew that Tyson was a very strong brand in Durban. And I thought to myself, I wonder if there's a real estate company that can come from Durban and really make it in Cape Town. Because a few had tried and a few had failed, to be honest with you. But going to Durban, I went to the various Tyson offices, and one thing that I saw was dominant market share. And that there showed me that, you know, this is a strong brand. And that's so important when setting up in a new region. And the second thing was really the leadership in the organization. I mean, Chris took me under his wing, and Lee Ellis took me under their wing. And when I met Chris for the first time, and Lee for that matter, they were so different to the other people that I'd met in the industry that were the CEOs or the directors of these companies. And these guys were totally different. I think what made them so special is that they really were people, you know, people, if that makes sense. They understood that, you know, business was built on people. And people were the biggest asset in the organization. And I think ultimately that was what really resonated with me. So when I met with Chris, I think back then the head office was in Umhlanga. And I did this presentation, and I got halfway through this presentation, and Chris said, you know, when can we get started? And I said, flip, you know, let's do this thing. I'll be ready in the next 2 or 3 months. And then we opened up our first office in 2015. 2015, I think it was around March, April, May 2015 in Sea Point. And I know we spoke about it earlier today, but the idea was to really go straight into the lion's den and open up a real estate office in what is probably the most competitive real estate market on the African continent. And I thought to myself, flip, if we can crack it here, we'll be able to do it anywhere. And yeah, we started off with 5 agents, of which only one of them had any real experience. And we built up, and very, very quickly, we were one of the biggest real estate offices on the Atlantic seaboard.
And can you remember your first sale there?
Oh, absolutely. So there was a mate of mine from school. He actually saw on social media that I was started this new company, and I know all my mates were very excited for me. which was awesome. And his name was Brett Aitken. I thought I'd drop his name in just to say thank you so much, you know. But he sent me an inbox message, and he said, Nick, I've got this apartment in Greenpoint. You know, can you sell it? I referred it to Philippe, who was one of our intern agents at the time and has now become one of the partners in the business. Yes. And Philippe sold it within a week. And that was the first sale we ever did in Cape Town. It was around a 1.4 million rand sale.
Yeah.
And then the next one was actually a 12 million rand sale, which also came from a friend of ours who was a more established businessman, a family friend. And we sold a beautiful apartment in Granger Bay for like 12.5 million, and we were off to a flying start, you know. So yeah.
Look, it's funny how it works. I mean, what's nice is you obviously built a reputation as you went through your various stages of the career before, but now stepping into leadership positions obviously very different. And now more so, it's going to be again new challenges, etc., which is very exciting. What I quite like about it is that you are still young, so obviously the level of innovation is going to be there, but you probably find you haven't learned these bad habits, or you're not going to draw from things that don't necessarily appeal to you. Like if I look at our market, for example, when we decided to pull out of newspaper advertising, there was this 50-50 split in the office, and it was largely determined by the level of experience, or the years of experience. Was one half was saying, how dare you do that? And the next half was saying, you can now spend that money on Facebook advertising. Or So a sort of roundabout question, stepping into this new role, obviously having the experience that you've currently got, what most excites you about either new implementations or changes that you want to make that like that will get everybody excited?
So that's a great question, and I think that's something I've always been passionate about.
Yeah.
So I mean, one of the first things we started doing, and I think we were probably the first real estate brand in South Africa to do it, is we spent a lot of money on social media and making videos of properties and showcasing our agents in a way like no one had ever seen before. And I suppose it's always great when your competitors start to copy you eventually, and we've had a lot of that, which is fantastic. But we've always been at the forefront of innovation. I remember, you know, the whole conversation about pulling out of the papers, my man, I was pushing that so hard. You know, and we were one of the first companies to pull out of the newspapers because we literally saw that we had so much more value spending that money online, and it's something that the agents enjoy as well, and they enjoy showcasing their talents and their abilities, and why not give them the platform to do that? So that's really, you know, I think one of the things that set us apart, you know, when we first got started, and it's definitely going to be one of the things that set us apart going forward in the future. You know, the next line of innovation is just around the corner. You know, we're constantly looking for new ways to you know, market our agents and showcase beautiful properties, and we really want to be at the forefront of that. You know, going forward into the future. So I think so much of what we're trying to do is not just do that for the occasional agent here and there, but we need to get the whole the whole company on that level, you know, and we want to just make these sorts of technologies available to the entire organization. And one of the things you don't have to be the next selling sunset supermodel to make a little video. You know, I mean, you're a perfect example, AJ.
Thanks. So you said something very important, which I want to just go back to, is you said to market our agents, and I think that's extremely important. I personally feel it's no longer about the agency marketing a property. I think everybody does it exactly the same. Everybody's got Prop 24, private property, their own personal websites, etc., etc. You mentioned it, everybody's doing video now. The fact that people do copy means it's caught on and it's obviously working. But there's very few agencies that promote their agents. Because in order for the agency, I believe, to have a strong brand, you've got to have a lot of strong personal brands that are your megaphones in the marketplace, and in turn that's how the agency obviously gains market share. So that's super exciting. It certainly excites me just knowing, because people work with people, but the people have to be affiliated to somebody, otherwise there'd be Jerry Jeffrey, Nick Pearson, and so on, sort of real estate.
So on that, you know, I think in the past, a lot of companies were insecure about that, marketing their agents ahead of the brand.
Yeah.
You know, our approach has been slightly different, and I think for us, we see our agents as the brand. It's the same thing. They're exactly the same thing in my eyes. So when I promote an agent, I'm promoting Tyson Properties. We're not insecure if agents leave and then we've built them up and then they go. If you know, unfortunately, that is the nature of the industry.
Yeah.
But we believe if we can offer them the best environment to perform and the right,
Yes.
technologies and the right tools and the right culture, then they're not going to go anywhere anyway. So I think the approach that we are really trying to push hard is that agent-centric approach. And as much as we want to take the most beautiful homes to the market,
yes.
and we want to really look after our clients, whether they're selling something in Khayelitsha, or whether they're selling something in Westville or Clifton,
yeah.
or Bantry Bay, wherever it might be, we really do look after our clients in that regard. But for us, our biggest client is our agent.
Well, without them, you would have...
Exactly.
You'd just be yourself.
Exactly. Without them, our company wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So we're not insecure about promoting them. In fact, we love it. We want them to come to us with opportunities. With there's a great property we have. Let's make a video on that property.
Yes.
Or let's do a social media blog post on this new development that we have going. And we really want to highlight our agents, because when our agents tell their story, they're actually telling the Tyson story.
Yes.
And those stories are what really make our organization.
Yeah. Look, it can't be more true. And like you say, at the minute somebody's putting it out there, it's exposure for yourself, it's exposure for themselves. I can only look at it especially with Instagram. I get a lot of business from there, and that's really just me being me, sharing my story. One with family, obviously with real estate, and people can relate to it. So the more you are encouraging your agents to promote themselves and giving them the tools to be able to promote themselves, you'll find their business will start to increase, as long as they're just being authentically them. Not everybody's going to be comfortable in front of a camera at first, but I've got a very good friend that's in Australia, where in one of his marketplaces, that's all he does, but his direct or probably biggest competitor that does videos a 60-plus-year-old agent.
Sure, yeah.
And so she doesn't dive into pools, or she's not overly flashy. I wouldn't say she's rigid, but she says, this is the lounge, this is the dining room. She's well presented, and she gets tons of business from it, because she's just recognized in the community. So the fact that you're prepared to promote that is major.
Yeah.
And what else is on the cards? What else excites you about your new role? Because
so I must be honest. I was telling you and some of the guys when we were having coffee earlier. Like, for the first time in a while, I got butterflies. You know, a few weeks ago when I was, planning budgets and preparing a new marketing teams and putting together, all the exciting things that we're going to unleash, the training academy that we're going to unleash this year. And so I must be honest, I haven't felt this excited in quite some time, and like a little bit nervous as well, but in a good, healthy way. I think for me the role is so different. I've been running Tyson in the Western Cape now for close to 8 years, and started with 5 agents and built it up, and now we have about 150 agents in the Western Cape, and we have 5 offices. So I've been very fortunate that I'm not just thrown in the deep end. Like, I really got mentored and trained, and groomed to this point by Chris Tyson and some of the other leadership within the organization. So I'm not just getting thrown in the deep end, but yeah, it's a massive challenge for me to go from connecting a regional brand to connecting a national brand.
Yes.
And that's going to be, I suppose that's the first challenge, is how do we connect this brand nationally, and how do we implement training academies nationally, marketing nationally, and that's a very different challenge.
Well, I suppose because you're going to have to be fairly versatile, because not all markets are the same, and I
Correct,
think you could probably have a general blueprint, but what's going to work for a 97 million rand home, although a similar sort of setup, is not necessarily going to work for the 1.5 million rand home.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it's exciting nonetheless. One of the things you mentioned was, yes, you've obviously you've been running an agency. You got halfway through. It would have been interesting to see what they would have said if you got through the back end of your presentation.
Yeah.
But you can maybe pull that out now and throw it on the table if there was some gems tucked away in there. What is going to be your sort of first announcement? Obviously, you mentioned the Trading Academy, which is great. When does that sort of start to roll out, and what is it going to be based on?
So the first thing that we need to establish is the new mission and vision for Tyson going forward, and that's something we've put a lot of time and effort into establishing that, and then everything kind of flows from that point. So the Training Academy is going to be called the Diamond Academy, and it's something that I've put so much time and effort and love into. I mean, it's something I'm hugely passionate about. Like I said, with my real estate background, it's something that I'm going to actually present myself.
Yes.
I'm going to be part of that. I've got a gentleman, Christopher Carter, joining as well, and he's I don't think I've ever met a man with more sales knowledge in my life. I think you're going to really appreciate him as well, and like that stuff's going to be rolled out in April. So that's literally just over a month away, and
so the countdown begins.
So the countdown begins, and for me now it's all about connecting the company. And I suppose the big challenge is for the last few years we haven't been able to do that. Awards, we've had to have online awards. I haven't been able to travel, so part of becoming the MD of Tyson Properties is I had this window of being the GM where I really actually didn't get to utilize that time as much as I would have liked to because of lockdowns and restrictions and people getting COVID and then not getting COVID. And so I haven't really been able to see all the offices and meet everyone yet. So the challenge for me now is to go and visit as many people as I can. Let the people also know who I am as a person and get to know me and feel comfortable with me. And then I suppose the proof is in the pudding. I want to deliver incredible training. We want to deliver incredible marketing to the group. And there's just so much value we can still add, and I think we're just really scratching the surface. Tyson Properties is a very strong brand. Just the name Tyson is something very, very special. Our logo stands apart, and I think what Chris has really done is he's built the most incredible foundation, for us to go and create a brand of the future, and create a brand that really transforms real estate and leads the way into the future. And that's something I'm massively passionate about, and I couldn't be more privileged to come off the back of what Chris Tyson has actually built up and the platform that he has built for us youngsters, now to really take the reins and build something truly iconic.
What's quite exciting is you've been in the trenches with us. And I say that in the sense that you've seen the highs, the lows, where to be consistent, because you've been an agent. Especially when you get a wife, it's nice that you sometimes can go home to cry to someone and not your own pillow.
Absolutely,
After a hard day. And you did mention a family is incredible in the sense that I don't think I would be where I am personally without my wife. And I can say that with confidence because you've got this number one supporter that continually pushes you to sort of succeed, and you're not allowed to fail because
you can't. There's
number one supporter.
There's too much at stake,
and then kids come along.
Exactly.
So I'm quite excited to see how that's going to be. I know a lot of the time, especially when agencies are established, it's not necessarily done by someone that's directly been an agent and then succeed, or not doesn't succeed, but success is somebody else that maybe started a brand, and it's cool that the torch is being passed. So it's going to be, I think, an exciting 2022. It's going to certainly have its challenges, but I think it's going to have more triumphs than challenges.
So that's one of the massive things is that we're going into a positive market in South Africa, and I think we had a positive budget speech. Sonar couldn't have. I suppose the president couldn't have said anything better that would have made us feel better. Hopefully the execution is a bit better behind, you know, everything that he said. But we're going into a positive market.
Yes.
I mean, so one of the things is last year we grew by 25% as a real estate company. And that is massive.
And that's nationally.
That's nationally. 25% nationally, which is something I think we can all be very proud of. But I think when the going gets tough, the tough get going.
Yeah.
And we're not going to slow down. You know, we really have the feeling that we're just getting started. And yeah, like you said earlier, with the right support at home, and I think one of the most important things for me is that you know, the support that I do get at home is very, very special. And I think you know, when you're in sales, you can get caught up in the nonsense like quite quickly. You can get caught up in the hype, and you start believing you're special when those big commissions start to roll in. And I think, you know, having a wife or a partner that can keep you level-headed during those moments, you know, is very special as well.
Yeah, it's unmatched. I mean, anybody that's not in sales that can be with somebody that is in sales, especially real estate, I think it takes someone very special.
Yeah.
Because like it's easy to get consumed by the phone calls, the messages, the appointments, the excitement. Yeah. There's huge amounts of thrill. But yeah, to have someone that grounds you and keeps you accountable is certainly special.
Exactly.
But yeah, and to sort of wrap up, I don't know how long we've been going. If you could give me, we've spoken about it quite a bit, but if you could give me 2022 in a couple sentences, what's exciting you, and going forward, what's there to
definitely
excited about?
Something to be excited about is the market that I touched on earlier. I feel like we are going into a positive market and a positive phase of the country all round. I mean, we all remember 2017 when there was that 1 week where the president fired the finance minister twice in a week, and literally, if I show you a graph, you'll see that week. That's when things started to slow down for the economy. It was literally like it was in that week. You can really see it. But now we're coming into a space where there is strong leadership coming through, which is really fantastic. And that's something we really needed as a country. I think on the back of a few hard years, it takes a while for good leadership to actually show results and to become fruitful. Yeah. And I feel like we've just turned a huge corner. I think in the context of you know, emerging markets and where we are globally as a country, I think we handled the pandemic very well. You know, it was very difficult for all of us, and you know, we lost loved ones and things have happened, and that was really tough to deal with. But in the context of an entire nation, I think we've done really, really well, and we've had, I believe, good, decisive leadership in a time where, if you look at, you know, the major powers in the West, where they were humming and hawing about masks, humming and hawing about lockdowns, I think the President Cyril Ramaphosa, you know, made some very big moves, and he made them early on, and I think we saved a lot of people because of that, and for us as a nation, I think we're moving into a really positive space, and I think we positioned well to become one of the top emerging markets in the world, and I'm quite excited about that prospect. And I think, you know, in the context of Tyson Properties, we need to kind of leverage that, and we need to be positive about where this country is going. And us as a brand, we're investing heavily into opening more offices, you know, throughout South Africa, and really growing new leaders. And you say, what is the most exciting thing about Tyson going forward? For me, we're in the business of growing people. That's really what it is. We want to find top talent, and we want to nurture that top talent. We want to train that top talent. And you know, we joke around. We call them the assassins. You know, like our top talent. We call them the assassins. And we want to find more people like that, and grow more people like that, and nurture them. And Jared, I mean, we were having the discussion like, where's your career going? What's your next? And how do we support you in that? How do we build you up? So we really want to create the ultimate platform for young talent, whether they have real estate experience or not, to join an organization and really, really grow into their full potential. And that's really the point of Tyson Properties, is to see people grow and to build them up and to train them and give them an awesome place to work, a place that they're, you know, proud of, and a place where they feel at home.
Well, it's you say that. I think any industry, any business, no matter what it is, and it sounds like you've got what you want to be your core values, because in your core values help sort of drive the direction and then give the actions and activities, etc., that allow people to be successful. But what you'll find is, and I notice this again, I can only talk for my business and people that work closely with me, is when you have your values and your head sort of screwed on, you start attracting the people that you want to work with you or closely, or you find people that are nice to work with or you're prepared to work with. It excites me, obviously, that you guys want to target the younger generation, because I do feel that's obviously the next phase of people that need to come through to sort of ensure the longevity of real estate. But it's also nice that when you know these things, the person who's older can still slot in comfortably and hit the ground running with some experience or not.
Yeah, so that's something that we strive to get right, is that blend of experience and youth. And when you get it right, it's a powerful thing, you know. And I'll tell you an awesome story. So back in the day, I say back in the day before lockdowns were a thing, Buchanan boys, STBB, used to throw these huge parties once a year. They called them the curry evenings, and they were it was like quite a famous party that all the real estate brokers in Cape Town used to go to. And I'll never forget that first curry evening. We were invited to there was about 10 of us at the time, and it was all these young bucks, and we were all dressed, you know, in suits, like something out of, you know, the show Suits.
Yeah.
And we were suited up with ties and waistcoats and blazers, and we thought we were quite cool, you know. And we rocked up at this party, and we were by far the youngest group of people there. And before lockdown, the last party we saw, we were not the only young people anymore. Yeah. And I think that we were very much part of that leading the way in that regard of bringing youth into the real estate industry. And I love the fact that it's rubbed off on other companies as well. But, you know, you touched on it, that blend of experience and youth in the same room together is a potent combination.
Look, I mean, my first mentor in real estate had been doing it for 23 years, which at the time was 1 year older than her. 1 year, she had been doing real estate for longer than I had been alive. And obviously we sort of polar opposites in sort of the way we like to work, etc., etc. She was also probably one of the most admin switched on people, whereas I think any good estate agent or any modern estate agent is useless at admin. And I certainly
correct.
But it's crazy because you get to draw from this wealth of experience that's obviously seen success over the years in so many markets, and then you start to just take the things that work best for you. And that's why, like, doing this podcast, I get to meet so many different people, and although this would be either the 4th or the 5th episode that airs, there's all these conversations that you get to happen with different markets all over the world. Obviously things like Zoom, etc., allows it to become a lot more local, and you get access to people. And what's quite exciting is, although, and you'll see this because I know you follow other markets globally, and I think any strong leader does, because usually what's happening out there, if it's not here yet, it's either going to come here,
it's on its way,
or vice versa. Whatever we're doing ends up sort of outside of our borders. And it's exciting that the people that I speak to, some of them are younger than me, and they've seen astronomical success, and then others are sort of at the pinnacle of their career, and it's just been learning by trial and error, but they adopt these modern techniques, and they soar, which is...
So I think isn't that one of the most beautiful things about our industry, is that you know, it's very hard to pinpoint what makes a good real estate broker, and there's so many different personality types.
Well,
and often people, you know, they come up to me and they say, Nick, what makes a good real estate broker? You must know what makes a good real estate broker. They must be extroverts. And I say, you know, no. In fact, I would say Ryan Johnson, who's the top broker in the Tyson Group generally, Adrian Van Riel, you know, both of them, they are actually introverts. You know, Michael Bester is also a little bit of an introvert. I'm just talking about the Cape Town agents now. Deborah Maddox, she's an extrovert, you know. So you've got two different types of, you know, personality types, and both of them can be just as successful. But it really is the art of the doing. That's what it comes down to. So it doesn't matter what age you are or what profession you've been in. Good agents, they do the work, and they don't talk about doing it too much. They get stuck in and they pick up the phone, they make their cold calls, they knock on the doors, and they generate those leads, one way or another. And that's what makes a good real estate broker. It's the art of the doing,
And a bit of feedback. I mean, I think that's the number one complaint is lack of feedback in the industry. So if you get that right, you're already leaps and bounds ahead of the next person.
Yeah.
So my next question is completely off topic, but it's something that I've heard once. I've asked two people and it excites me. But if you were an animal being eaten by another animal, what animal would you be?
So that's a very easy answer for me, and I'll tell you why. I was at this conference once, and there was this motivational speaker there, and I was working for this big real estate brokerage. And the guy said to me, or he said, I thought he was talking to me, obviously, but he said to this group of about 150 brokers, he said, stand up if you're a lion. And I jumped up, and I looked around the room, and I was the only idiot standing up. I don't know, just something, it just hit me when he said that, and I stood up, and he called me to the front of the room, and he asked me why was I a lion. So I tried to describe why I thought I was the lion, and it was quite a funny thing. It was very embarrassing. But if I was an animal that was going to be eaten by another animal, I'd like to go out in flames. I'd like to be a lion fighting to the death with another lion for a territory. And I don't know if that explains your answer, if that's a good answer. It's a bit corny, but I'd like to experience that fight till the death,
So it's quite exciting. So my answers that I've had back is one would want to be a fish, just so it's like one bite and done.
Okay.
And then the other one was a tortoise, just so that it's how long is it going to take? The other animal's either just going to get over it and eventually walk away. So it's super cool hearing the responses. And every time I've asked the question, I've promised that I'd follow up and check to see why that question's asked, but admittedly I can't find the answer. And I think I have to pay for a course to be able to get the booklet at why it's asked. And
so the right answer is you probably want to be a hedgehog. Because then you just roll into a little ball, like in that book, Good to Great, But for me, really, I think it would be the adrenaline of fighting a top competitor that's actually better than you and deserves to be better than you because they ultimately going to eat you.
Well, there we go. So it's a question I'm going to continue to ask, and one day.
That is such a weird question, Jared. Yeah.
The idea would be to get the guy on the podcast to ask the question, and I'll hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So we'll get there. But what I really want to know is, so let's circle back. So you're 22 years old. What year was that when you joined the market?
So that was 2012. That was 2012.
Okay.
I recently moved back to Cape Town, so I did my schooling career in Cape Town.
Yeah.
I went to Durban to play rugby at the Sharks Academy and at College Rovers. Had the time of my life. Spent a lot of time, Joe Cools as well, and surfing North Beach. But it was such a special time, and also actually lived with my cousin Barrett Pearson, who recently was nominated as the top individual Remax agent in the whole of KZN. I was actually very proud of him, but I lived with him at the time when I was in Durban, and I think I used to sit on show. And sorry, I'm diverting a bit now, but he would always ask me the question. He'd say, Nick, you're going to sit on show for me this weekend. We're going to go put the boards up. Either I'm going to pay you $250 to sit on show, or I'm going to pay you 7,500 rand if you sell it. And I always chose the 7,500 rand, and I sat on show for a whole year, and I never sold a single property. So he was laughing.
That he told you about. He sold it on the Monday.
Maybe he did sell them, but he had a what's it called, a house sitter for free for a whole year.
There we go.
But
good investment.
And then in 2012, I moved to Cape Town, and that's when I started as like an intern agent. Yeah.
So it's interesting because 2012, correct me if I'm wrong, was a fairly good year in real estate as well. So I started in 2015, although I only sold one home.
So that was a very good year for real estate, 2015.
Jeez, for Jared, I sold it in November, so I only got paid in the following year. So,
Okay.
so it was an abysmal Christmas. But fortunately, I was single, I lived by myself. I could survive on 2-minute noodles.
Johnny's Rotties there.
Yeah,
eh?
jeez,
Yeah.
promise you. I couldn't afford to go out to get there. That was the problem. But what's interesting is now when people ask me like, well, what's the market like? And I say it's good, or that I think I'm thinking of getting into real estate. Well, how's the market? And I said, to be honest with you, it's no different. It might be the greatest market, or it might be the worst, because you don't know. You've got no experience in it. And I said, so when I came into it, I was so naive, because when I only made my one sale, I was over the moon. I mean, I'd ended this drought and I sold one. And then the next guy who maybe sold 24 homes or 55 homes the year prior was like, I've only sold 36. It's a terrible market.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
jeez,
Yeah.
I'd be retiring in 36 sales. So it's quite cool to sort of try to get to my point that I've sort of lost my train of thought a bit. But what's nice is when you want to start real estate and you move into sort of any organization that offers you the training, it doesn't really matter what the market is. And I think we've spoken about it quite a bit, and like with training, etc. It's, well, why would you want to join? If I was at an opposing agency, maybe I wouldn't say a name, but why would you want to join Tyson's? And if that's something, again, where it just goes back to empowering the agents, how do you grow them? Because everyone knows that any sort of marketing ploy an agency has to say, hey, come, they always tell you to look up, because there's no ceiling, there's no earning, there's unlimited earning potential. But what they don't say equally is that there's no floor either.
They don't mention that part. So I actually, when I'm interviewing people, I talk about the floor.
Yeah.
Because I've experienced the floor. I've experienced droughts. I've experienced the highs and lows of real estate. I spoke to you earlier about the first property that I sold.
Yeah.
And then I went and I thought I was a hero, so I bought a new BMW 320 at the time. I thought I was the coolest guy in Cape Town. But after that, I didn't sell a home for 4 months.
Yeah.
And I had that experience. I also had that experience of, you're trying to put kids through school.
Yeah.
You're trying to get engaged, or you're trying to pay for a wedding, and you got to sell houses to do that. And so I think I'm very fortunate to have had all those highs and the lows. And when I do interview an agent, I talk about that.
Yeah.
I don't try and lure them across to Tyson. I almost tell them all the bad things up front.
Yeah.
So that they're ready for it. And whether the market's good or not, I think in South Africa we're going to have good markets and we're going to have bad markets, and they're going to come and go. 2012 was probably the beginning of a good market in Cape Town. I think before that it was quite brutal on the agents. And what the agents went through in 2008 and 2009. I always used to hear stories of that, and I think maybe we experienced that going into lockdown, certainly not coming out of lockdown.
Yeah, we got shot out of a cannon.
Yeah, we got shot out of a cannon. But you got to talk about those things, and you got to prepare them, and that's what you want, because real estate is not a 100-meter sprint. It's a marathon. I know it's such a cliched thing to say, but I would even say it's not like a marathon. It's like climbing Mount Everest every year. And you got to get your hiking boots on. You got to prepare mentally. You got to prepare physically. You got to get your mind in good shape to deal with all the ups and downs, and that's such an important part of becoming a broker. So whether the market's good or not, I think
it's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant, because you need to do this for a minimum of 4 years before you start making proper money as an agent.
Well, I think consistent money, anyways. Or where it becomes like an income. I mean, you've got to act like a hunter but think like a farmer. You've got to continually be planting these seeds to sort of grow your crops and be able to harvest your crops, but by the same time you've got to hunt the chickens or whatever you want to hunt, I suppose, in the short term. So I learned that when I started, and again, you've got to leech onto a mentor, or if there's training programs available. I think a lot of them are very similar in the sense that there's the same message that's conveyed. It's just worded differently, and each person again just pulls from it what works or relates to them.
And Jared, on that, like, I can't tell you how important that is. I think one of the defining moments in my career was after I sold that first property. I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. This is my vocation. I love it. And at that point, I already started thinking of how a real estate company should be run, and innovation, and I became obsessed with learning. But it was a very humbling experience to get back to my desk after I did that sale and realize how little I actually knew. And when you realize that, and when you're open to learning, that's actually when you get better. But you first got to realize how bad you are. And a lot of people don't accept that. A lot of people, I think, in today's society, especially the younger generation, we like to think we know everything. But that humbling experience of starting from scratch, realizing you know nothing, and being teachable, is so important in the life of an agent, going from being an intern who literally is starting out to being a top performing real estate broker. You have to be open to, you have to be coachable, you have to be trainable, and you have to read a lot, and you have to watch as many sales videos as you can on YouTube, and just absorb information as much as you can. And I think, I always try to describe it to like the young guys entering the industry. I said, like, what sport did you play? And let's use the context of rugby, for example. I said, the first day you touched a rugby ball, were you any good? And the answer is no, you were shocking. Okay, but you got better. And you got better because you trained, and because you practiced, and because you spoke to people, and you surrounded yourself by other people that did the same thing. And that's probably what business is like in general, not just real estate, but
it's the stages of you consciously incompetent, unconsciously incompetent, and you become consciously competent and unconsciously competent. You've got to go through that cycle.
Absolutely,
before it becomes easy. But why I really like real estate, and I think why I eventually gravitated towards it. So also, I've been around real estate for my entire life. My mom's been an agent. I used to swim on showers, or I used to swim in swimming pools at showers when I was 5 and 6. I sat them on the weekend. Also, I did them for free. I got them paid back in terms of, got my school fees paid and whatnot. But I'd been around it for so long, and then it's very different doing the show house and the odd thing here and there versus actually doing it. But what I found was that, and what really excites me to this day, is that no scenario is really similar. Yes, you can do very similar activities daily that sort of produce the same results, but you can be doing it for 54 years, and I'll have a sale where the experience is something you've never seen before, whether it goes right or wrong, or vice versa. So like you say, if you're not open to learning, it's going to catch you off guard at some point,
most definitely,
and it's going to expose you. But that's where it becomes this people sort of orientated business behind the scenes, where if you're not talking to your colleagues in the office and comfortable going to them with problems, etc., it makes a huge difference. It's a people business now. It's no longer I compete against you and you compete against me, because we're going to possibly, maybe in the next 5, 10, 15, 25 years, start competing against technology. And that's when the relationships matter.
So I think we're very fortunate, you and I, that we've come into the industry with amazing people. And I mean, like, all the other MDs and CEOs of the other, highly competitive real estate companies, they've all reached out to me, and they've all phoned me and congratulated me. And I often play golf with some of them, go for dinner with some of them, and some of them have become, really dear friends and amazing mentors to me. And I think that's testimony to the fact that, the current leadership in our industry in South Africa is in a very good place. It's in a very, very powerful place. And I don't think it's ever been like that, and I think we're very fortunate to be entering at a time like this. And just circling back to, what we spoke about earlier, I also think it's really important for the youngsters coming through in the industry to understand that it's not just all about, the fancy cars, the big sales, the fancy suits and the nice homes and apartments and all of that. You actually you're there to serve. Ultimately, you're there to serve. And I think that, one of the things in providing the right service is to get the right qualifications. And I just, a lot of young people might be watching this, and although, we have struggles along the way, you have to become qualified. And it's so important, because if you're not qualified, you're never going to be the real deal. You know,
well, that's exactly it. I mean, this has been said since I've started real estate, is that real estate, even prior to 2015, it's a profession now, or it's seen as a profession anyways. Gone are the days where it's like the handbag brigade, or you just did it because you didn't know what to do. And I think that's super exciting, because although people have made massive successes out of themselves throughout the years, now more than ever, it's geared towards you being a professional, or not property practitioner, but professional real estate agent, that this is your living. And you've got to be qualified to do it. Whilst you're doing it, and you do get busy, is it long-winded and boring and frustrating? Yes, but you do learn a lot from it. But again, it just goes back to admin.
So it's probably more about discipline than
qualification
than anything else.
Something else, but it's just because I don't enjoy sitting still for a long period of time, and your file's this thick.
Look, most salespeople will relate to what you're saying right now.
But you've got to do it, and we
exactly,
which is exciting, I think. And on that, so obviously this is talking for people that aren't in the industry. So once you're qualified, although what's nice about real estate, and unlike any other profession, is you can start working from day one whilst you're doing your qualification.
Correct.
So you get to learn on the go, and you gain experience, which I think is not the same. I mean, you can't practice law and not be an attorney, or have got the degree prior, which is probably a good thing.
No,
I think it's easier to
probably is. But I suppose it's like doing your articles. You know, if you're an accountant or a CA, and you go and you do your articles and you learn, and you get paid a little bit of money. And I think being a real estate agent is the same thing. I mean, when I started, I remember I was in a big national company, and I won Rookie of the Year in my first year at this company, and I was obviously over the moon about it. But I sold a few properties, and then the one month I had a great month, and I sold 12 properties in 1 month, and that was amazing. But like outside of that, maybe I sold another 6 other properties through the course of the year. And I didn't actually make that much money in my first year. It was the money that I made, I would say, kind of paid for all the repairs on my car, and paid for petrol, and kind of paid the cell phone bill, and for the suits that you need to wear when you're a youngster getting in the industry. Because you've got to look smart, and you've got to kind of upsell yourself a little bit, to get the confidence going. And I think I'll never forget, like I didn't really have the lists of numbers that we have today, where you can just print out a list of numbers through one of the CRM systems. So I had to knock on doors, and so I would go around knocking on doors, and every 2 weeks I needed to buy a new pair of shoes. So I almost had my shoe bill was part of my business plan, and
everything becomes a deduction.
Exactly, because I mean my shoes would wear out. After 2 weeks they would be worn out, and now that's kind of what it takes, eh?
Well, it's the work. You put the work and the results follow. Unfortunately, they don't happen overnight. Sometimes it does, and that's incredible. But you say that. So, I made little to no money in my. If anything, I spent more money than I earned. I don't know how that was possible at the time, but it happened. As long as you continue to invest in yourself, I think that's a major one. And when you've got a company that's prepared to invest in you, that's twice as good, or twice as incredible anyways. I'll never forget it was 2018. I'd sort of moved areas. It didn't work as well as there were many benefits that came out of it, but I'd come off my best year ever, moving into what was supposed to be even better than the year before. 6 months in, very little sales. So I spent money on a business coach, which at the time, it was a heated debate at home. Like, why should I spend money to make money? Why not just do it and make the money? But anyways, it turned out being the best thing I'd ever done. I did my annual target in 6 months, which was fantastic, but it didn't come without doing the work. And
so it's crazy. I suppose real estate is an interesting business where, how accountants really like to run their businesses. They obviously like to see the money come in, and then the money go out. Now in real estate, it's the opposite way around. The money goes out,
and then hopefully it comes back in.
Hopefully it comes back in. But I think if you're doing the right things, and you have and you have a bit of experience, you start knowing where to invest.
Yes.
And yeah, that's probably like key. And I think the fact that you went and got a trainer is amazing, and that shows like a very mature person would do that. And I think, if I can really encourage, all the young people in the industry, or anyone in the industry who's not hitting the targets that they want to hit, go get a coach. I think it's massive. And then, like you say, a company that invests in its people is going to be crucial, because going into the future and where we see real estate going, investing in people and people's growth is massive.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the only way to grow your market share. And I think today there's so much out there, and there's so much noise for people to come into the industry and find an organization that kind of helps direct them with the right experience and the right leadership and the right mentorship is amazing. Whether you find that at Tyson or any other company, I know there's some great companies out there that also offer that solid mentorship. You can fast track your career. And I think that's one thing that I've really tried to do with my staff is I've gone, okay, so I was a real estate agent for about 4 years.
Yeah.
It was a very short period of time before I got into management, but I was a real estate broker for 4 years. And how do I take everything I learned in those 4 years and try and impart that knowledge over like an 8-month period? And that's a tricky thing to do, but I have seen so much success in that. And some of our youngsters coming through that are just, absolutely killing it out there in the marketplace, because they're able to take that experience that maybe I had over a long period of time, condense it and learn from it and grow in a very short period of time.
Well, that's all it is at the end of the day. You take what you like, you implement it, and as long as you implement it, things start to happen. And sometimes it happens. The more you implement it, or the more things you do, don't quote me, if you need to make 5 phone calls a day and you make 10, you'll sell twice as many homes in half the amount of time.
Exactly.
Where you find those numbers is a different story.
You should be doing 100 calls a day, though. That's the only difference.
Do you know what the problem is? And I'm sure younger agents will agree to it, is we hate making phone calls. I'll send 100 WhatsApps a day, no problem.
The calling is something that I push quite hard in our offices in Cape Town. It's something that I think has been vital in our success. But obviously, you have different ways of connecting with people.
There's certainly a place for it. So what I do is, when I need to make a phone call, I can't be sitting down. I have to be standing 99% of the time. I have my headphones in, because I'm a very animated person when I talk. So I'll stand, I'll walk, I feel more confident, I feel more comfortable. And I'll do the calls. I'll also do it with someone. So we'll go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. One of the best videos I watched, and I mentioned it with Richard Wright, is there's 99 days of rejection, where his name's Johannesburg sets out to ask questions
so I listened to that when I was listening to your podcast last week. I really resonated with that,
and that's all it is. So I mean, yes, you're going to get a phone call where the person's not prepared. It's like anyone. When a call center agent phones you, you don't want to speak to them, or somehow they phone you at the worst possible time. And so that's like us in a way. But if you phone enough and you get enough no's, you're going to start getting yeses. So I think it's not even like a psychological thing, because I'll make the phone calls because I know I have to. But it's one of those things.
Dealing with rejection is quite a tricky thing, and it's something that you don't ever really get comfortable with. I think if you're comfortable, if you're truly comfortable with rejection, then you're not a real salesperson. I think it's something that you learn to live with, but you should never be comfortable with it. You should always be like, okay, well, what went wrong? How could I deal with that better? And how can I learn from that rejection? But yeah, it is something that when people join the industry, they get very uncomfortable with, and it's one of those things that, despite the rejection, you still have to do what you have to do, and you have to do the numbers, and you have to get to the calls, knock on enough doors,
So obviously, rejection, it happens, but when success happens, something that I've never been a part of, and it's now, is when you do well here, you get an overseas trip.
Correct, yeah.
So maybe let's end on that. Is where is it? Do we know where it is this year? And then of the trips that have happened, when the first one happened versus how many people went last year, and how many do you think are going to go this year? If if that's not a
Yeah,
reason
so
to get excited.
I can let the cat out of the bag a little bit. Yeah, we are hoping to still go to Cancun, Mexico,
Yeah.
which I've spoken to a few people about as one of the most amazing destinations in the world. And we're going to probably have about, one of the things we do is actually include partners in the trip. So we obviously pay for the agent, the double diamond agents, and also the officers actually also contribute to that, and we have sponsors as well. I thought I'd just make that clear. But yeah, we invite your partners if you make the double diamond cut, which I think is probably the only company that does that. I'm not sure if other companies do that. And yeah, we're hoping to go to Cancun, Mexico this year, and obviously depending on visas and COVID regulations and who knows what's going to happen in this world. I mean, I think like what we have gotten used to now is just the craziness of this world and everything that we're going through. So that really is the goal, and it's such a special time for us. I think when you work in a difficult environment, and it's not easy. Sales is not easy. Like I said earlier, the highs are high, but the lows are very, very low. And that trip is such a great time for us to just share in those stories, for us to get to know each other's partners, and to really let our hair down and have a great time. And the trips that we have gone on have been incredible. I mean, we went to New York and we did helicopter trips around New York. We stayed in 5-star hotels. I mean, the hotel I stayed in, I was looking down on Lady Gaga's penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. Yeah. And then we got on the Queen Mary and we did the 4th of July in Boston. We went up to Rhode Island, Nova Scotia, and that was a very special trip. And then the last trip, unfortunately, I didn't get to go on with the team because I found out my daughter had COVID. Yeah. Literally the day before, our bags were packed, so you can imagine how devastating the news was for us, and very fortunate that Hannah recovered the day the rest of the team arrived. She was actually fully recovered. She was doing gymnastics at that point in her room already. So we're very fortunate that she had a quick recovery. Yeah. But that was an amazing trip, and then I just went to the Maldives a month later with my family. So really excited to connect with the group again, and connect with you guys. And one thing about these trips is we have such a blast. Yeah. So
it's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Well, I appreciate your time. Obviously, it's super cool that this is the first one where it's face-to-face, and hopefully we get to do a few more of them as we go. And then as the year progresses as well, we'll catch up, we can challenge each other, we can talk about topics, maybe host a panel. We'll make it fun and exciting. But here's to a great 2022, and all the best for the new position.
Thank you very much, Jared, and thank you so much for hosting me on the podcast.
It's a pleasure.
And it's been awesome connecting with you, getting to know you, hearing your story as well. And I'm really excited to see how your career blossoms in Tyson, and where we can grow people like you. And I definitely think you have massive leadership potential in the organization as well. And let's see where this goes. I'm really excited about it. So thanks very much for having me.
Easy pleasure.